Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. And welcome to our NetBox community call for September 17th. I apologize for the technical difficulties we've had kind of getting started here. Just to kind of introduce myself, for those who don't know me, I'm probably a new face to some of you. My name is Richard Boucher. I'm a product manager at NetBox Labs, and I'll be your MC today for the NetBox community call. Let's try to keep this as interactive as we can. So please feel free to kind of use the chat to ask any questions or make comments as we're going through, and we'll try to address them as we go along. So let me just kind of move on to this month, kind of what we're going to be covering as part of our community call. So we'll be looking at some upcoming events just to highlight those. I'll be providing you just a few kind of very anecdotal results from the community survey, the NetBox community survey we did earlier this year. Just out of curiosity, a little bit of NetBox news, and then we get to the crux of our call, which is we have two guest speakers today. We have Arne, hopefully he'll be able to join before then, and we have Jason Davis as well. Looking forward to those talks. And then just some kind of closing thoughts around looking for speakers for future calls like this and an open discussion. We'll close the recording at the end, and we'll stay on. If there's anybody who has any kind of topics they want to discuss, NetBox related or otherwise, we can kind of just hang out and discuss those things towards the end. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is a couple of upcoming events. These are kind of webinars hosted by our own Rich Bibby. He does kind of a great job of making complex topics very approachable and kind of very easy to understand and get started with. And this fall, we're kind of moving into kind of more kind of basic NetBox topics for particularly for seasoned, I would call NetBox users. One of them around IPAM in October, and one around DSIM in November. Now, these webinars, I'm going to take a wild guess and think that the audience on this call probably is kind of past these topics, but I did want to highlight them because we often have kind of coworkers that are either new to NetBox or kind of in the periphery of NetBox that often have questions about how to do things, and these could be like great resources to kind of get started, get them kick-started in terms of using NetBox, and maybe even pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. So just want to encourage people, particularly in your workplace or other collaborators elsewhere. Feel free to point them. Real easy to register for these. Just go to the NetBox Labs website /events, and you'll find links for both of these webinars, and you'll be able to sign up for that. So hopefully that's good. Moving on from there. I did mention I wanted to kind of highlight a few results that we got from the community survey. I'm not going to go through all the results. That wasn't the point of this call today, but I thought that it might be interesting for you to kind of get some anecdotal results from there, particularly the ones that kind of relate to, like, how do I stack up against kind of other NetBox users? Like, where do I fit into the kind of the realm of other NetBox users? So one of the questions we asked is like, how long have you been using NetBox? And as you can see, it's a very interesting spread where, well over half of, or actually not well, but half of our of the community survey results. And actually, I should mention, we had 229 responses, which all things considered is a good response, but it by no means, covers the full NetBox community. It's definitely a sampling of the community. But it's still interesting to see that half of the respondents have 3 or more years experience, and a good 20% 5 or more years. So a lot of seasoned NetBox users out there. But it's kind of very evenly distributed, including like all the way down to new users, and that have just started using NetBox in the last 6 months. So I thought it was interesting that there's kind of a healthy mix of kind of new blood coming to NetBox, as well as kind of very seasoned network professionals using NetBox. So very healthy distribution, I thought. The other interesting metric that we decided to pull out is then, what versions are people actually running in NetBox in their production environments? And people could actually give multiple response answers to this. So the actual totals here actually come out to more than the number of actual respondents, because some have multiple production environments at different versions. But what I thought was interesting is that, at least within the sampling of the respondents, you can see that there's a definite trend towards keeping up with the latest versions of NetBox, and particularly, probably to give access to the latest features, but also to get the latest bug fixes and such. And so it was, I think it's very, very healthy. We kind of see the long tail that we're not surprised either, kind of the people that are kind of sitting back on older releases, and they have all sorts of reasons for that. And we'll actually be reaching out to those folks to kind of get a sense of what's holding them back from upgrading to a more recent release. And so, but I thought it was a very, very healthy mix here of or a very healthy distribution towards kind of much more the latest versions of NetBox. And to that end, the last piece of statistics I wanted to give you from the survey was kind of how frequently do people upgrade? And obviously, this is very much correlated to the previous slide. Obviously, if you're going to upgrade more often, it's probably because you're on a latest release. But I still thought it was interesting to kind of look at that there is a definite push to kind of upgrade as patches come out or as new releases come out, versus kind of holding out and waiting to the last minute or kind of way far out there. So I thought all of this was kind of very healthy, and I thought I'd share with you. Just again, there's no huge takeaways here other than to maybe be able to compare yourself and kind of where you sit compared to the rest of the community. So on that note, we can move on to a little bit of NetBox news. And it's been a very, very busy summer, and it's been a even more busy September as we kind of released a lot of the hard work that the NetBox maintainers have been doing over the last few months, and particularly, as I said, through the summer and through the beta program in August. So NetBox 4.1 came out in early September, on September 3rd, and we're already onto the 4.1.1 release, which came out last Thursday on September 12th. So NetBox 4.1 has a host of new features. I'm assuming most of you are kind of aware of that, but things like circuit groups, VLAN group ID ranges, nested device modules, rack types now that have been added. There's now an integration with the plugin catalog, so you can actually see kind of plugins that are available in the certification program now appear inside of the NetBox UI. And now the really cool feature as well is around user notifications, so that people can get notified through different processes in NetBox about different events. And we'll be leveraging that in some of the upcoming functionality, including branching, which is a new big piece that was released in September. On September 5th, the first version of it, which was labeled version 0.4, and an update to that on September 12th, at the same time as the 1.1 release on the 0.5.0, kind of bringing some bug fixes and some minor updates. Now, branching plugin is a huge update to NetBox in terms of how it can actually be used to support kind of change management and the whole change process around how you plan out changes and how you ultimately implement them in NetBox. And for those maybe another plug here to a webinar. Both Rich Bibby and Mark Coleman did a fantastic webinar. I think it was our most highly attended webinar yet. In late August, kind of highlighting the whole branching plugin functionality and how it actually works within NetBox. And so for those that are kind of unfamiliar with branching or new to it, haven't had a chance to look at it, I would strongly encourage you to check the recording of that webinar. So that's why I kind of put that plug on the screen there. Again, you can just go to NetBox Labs /events, and you'll find the introducing branching and change management in NetBox webinar, which is now an on-demand webinar. So I strongly encourage you to go there. And then finally, NetBox news is NetBox 4.2. There's no rest for the weary, and we're rolling right into the next planning phase of NetBox. So the 4.2 release is planned for October. Sorry, October. I can't read. Planned for December. Apologies. We're actively in the planning phase of kind of what's going to be kind of the core themes of the NetBox 4.2. And to that end, we've actually created a service provider working group, and we've actually already had essentially a group brainstorming session to collect thoughts and ideas of specific changes or specific updates that service providers are looking for in NetBox. And we've been hearing from the community, a certain level of interest from service providers to use NetBox more extensively if they had access to certain features and certain modeling capabilities, certain abilities to import output data at scale and things like that. And so we really wanted to kind of tap into that community or that part of the community to get a sense of what was important to them and see if we could actually include that in the NetBox 4.2 release. So we're kind of still working through that, and we're actively collecting that data and planning out what is feasible to be achieved in the time frame of 4.2. If you do have any thoughts or ideas, definitely reach out to us. We're always interested in hearing feedback and ideas. Obviously, there's the standard feature request process that you're all familiar with. But if you kind of also have broader ideas or kind of want to vouch for or advocate for a specific set of features or capabilities, we'd love to hear from you to properly prioritize that work. Cool. So I see that Arne's joined us. Very cool. Because I think the next we're on to that. Actually, we're on to the crux of our discussion today, which are our speakers. And turns out our first speaker is Arne. Are you there, Arne?
Yeah, I am here.
Hey, Arne. It's been a while since we last spoke. So just quick introduction. Arne is going to be providing us a talk today. Arne's comes to us from Atia in Norway. Arne's been a great collaborator of ours to help us kind of validate some early exploration we've been doing around different technologies, around data ingestion, around things like network discovery. So I'm really interested to hear what Arne has to say to us today. So thanks, Arne, for joining us.
You're welcome. It's quite fun to participate. So.
And we thank you for that. Did you want to share your screen? Do you have any?
Yeah. Like this, I think.
Yes, we can see it.
And what I'm going to show is my infrastructure where I can test new feature in both NetBox and different firmware release and stuff like that. And I'm working as a consultant, so I need to test a lot of different things and different setup. So today we are going to test a new feature in Aruba 10.14, which are IP unnumbered interfaces. And it's not actually documented, so we need to see. But at least we have the possibility to ping between two different devices here, at least. And I just want to show you that it was working before we starting. And I'm now going to write them manually, just so we can verify that we have broken the infrastructure. Otherwise, I could fool you. And now it's gone. To start my lab, I want to use setups using Slack. So now I actually starting to deploy my infrastructure. And I'm using Stackstorm for this. Not because that's the only way to do it, but it's one way to do it. And it's not that difficult. And we can see now it's running and updating my zero-touch provisioning. And if we are going to look into this, it's quite easy, at least to see what's going on. Because I need to update my zero-touch provisioning, and I need to find the router in my lab, and I need to start it and verify that the routing is okay. Then I can find the switches, I wipe them, and I start them and wait for them to be reachable. And this way, it's quite easy for me to test new configuration generated based on the information in NetBox. Verify that new fields and new features in NetBox still is conformant to my templates. I also have the possibility to test other Ansible-based stuff. My test environment is using EvenG, but you could use anything. And I use Ansible for generating the configuration. And that's the reason for that is that this project started some years before it was possible to generate configuration directly in NetBox. All the code is stored in Git. We have NetBox, we have StackStorm, and we have the zero-touch provisioning. It's just DHCP and TFTP. And then we have, we can look at this. Now we can see it has come to checking for reachability. We can see now here, well, at least all of them are up and running. And it looks like it's already succeeded. Yeah. And the test took just under 3 minutes to complete. And then we have to see if we have some reachability in the lab. Yeah, now it's good. And this, when I go out to my customer, this is one of my demos I use to show possibilities. And it's not necessary this workflow or this exact thing we are going to implement at the customer, but we can use it as a starting point for creating workflows and generate good ways of working. And well, I think digging into the small pieces of zero-touch provisioning, then we are need to dig into a lot of things. And here we have the configuration for the devices. We need to have DHCP config. We have for the host part. And yeah, this is deprecated, I know, but I haven't had time to update it. But based on this, I have created some workflows going out at my customer. And for instance, this one, let me find it. This is an automatic deployment of edge and access devices, where I'm using rules based on logging from the zero-touch provisioning. And then I find it and start it fully automatically, and it involves firmware upgrade also. But I don't think we have time for it on the 10 minutes demo. So I don't know if you want to see the full access switch zero-touch provisioning.
Well, we still have a few minutes, Arne. I guess it depends on how long you think it's going to take, but we still have a few minutes.
It takes some minutes. We can see it, and if it takes too long, well, you know, we can just skip it and have it later.
Are any of the artifacts associated with this, Arne, publicly available, or is this all kind of?
This is not actually that public available because it's not a product type. But I'm thinking about. But just let me start it, and then we can have a little chat. You know. Talking and thinking is two different things that are not that easy to do at the same time.
I get it. I get it.
But what I did now is deleting the startup config, and then I just rebooted the device. And I actually haven't tested the current firmware here. Yeah, you were asking if this is public. No, it's part of it is public, like the action pack for NetBox and stuff like that. But I could. I've been thinking about creating a small project with part of it, which could be used as a starting point and an inspiration for creating a test environment, because I think this is a quite good way to do testing which are not really expensive, because it's quite cheap to do it. You don't need a lot of hardware extra in your lab environment and stuff like that. But be aware, the simulators are not totally compliant with the hardware, but you can test a lot of things. And at least I'm doing a lot of configuration changes with Ansible, and having a good environment for testing that my playbooks and tasks are doing what I think they do. That's quite important. And you can't just run it in your production environment. That's not good. So I'm thinking about creating something which is available for. I think we should have some message here also soon.
Yeah, well, I'd encourage you, Arne, to at least make some of it, the fundamentals of it, publicly available, because I think people do draw inspiration from the way people kind of set things up and things. And so even though if you might not want to publish it all, I think it would still be very beneficial to the general community to get a sense of how you approach this and how you put these pieces together. So I think it's great.
And different thing is that how to do zero touch provisioning on a data center. That's actually not that hard because the devices are fixed in place and you know they will be there. But a lot of devices like this edge equipment, perhaps you need to stage it on your office and then ship it to a different location. And then you need to keep in mind that the IP address and routing you're getting after you have the configuration doesn't fit the deployment infrastructure, and how to overcome things like that. That's not that obvious for all. And having a example of how to do that, I think that could be
Absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely. Well,
So
thanks, Arne. Oh, sorry.
yeah, now you can see it automatically started, and we are logging also that it download the new firmware, and it's similar ways to do it for all kind of network equipment, and it's not necessary Aruba. Cisco do it in a similar way, and Juniper and a lot of devices.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Arne.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't know, just keep me honest here. But if there's no questions, I think we'll move on to our next speaker. I will just quickly. Oh, you're jumping ahead of me. Go ahead there, Jason.
Yeah,
So
you didn't have anything to show off for me, did you? Or
well, I just had a slide with your name on it. So
all right.
So without further ado, here's Jason.
Hey, all. My name's Jason Davis. I'm a distinguished engineer at Cisco. And if you're familiar with the DevNet organization, I lead technical strategy and special projects there. If you're not familiar with DevNet, it's about network programmability and APIs, open source software, showing customers how they can use Cisco products and the telemetry, instrumentation, and APIs in them, and gluing them together with other things. And besides that role, I also get to play knock lead for automation and dashboards for our Cisco Live events. And if you've ever been to those, usually we'll go to some place like Las Vegas and take over Mandalay Bay or the San Diego Convention Center or Orange County Convention Center, and we'll have an event, right? It's a lot of training. There's certification exams, there's keynotes, and it's just a great opportunity for us to share what's going on. We've been doing that since 1989, if you can believe that. Back then it was called Networkers, but it's all over. We have it in the US, and we also have a European event. And the Barcelona one's really cool. I've been to the Fira in Barcelona, but because we want to show off Cisco technology, we tend to also bring in our own gear. And sometimes if the venue has Cisco access points and wiring switches in their closet, then we'll just take those over and run the show with their equipment. But sometimes they don't have Cisco equipment. I know. And so then we end up bringing in our own gear. To that end, we also bring our own IT support staff, and very rarely do we rely on the venue or any local IT companies to do the tech support for us. And as you can imagine, we're bringing in a lot of equipment to support almost 20,000 attendees with nearly 50,000 mobile devices and setting up 2,300 wireless access points across 2 million square feet of Mandalay Bay. We end up rolling out over 600 switches into the breakout rooms, into the hallways to connect digital signage and session recording equipment. You may see them up in the aluminum strut hooking up the access points for network and power over Ethernet. So there's a lot of equipment that has to get set up, and we don't have a lot of time to do it. We bring in a mobile containerized data center. It's not a Docker container. It's a shipping container. And we have the Cisco routers and firewalls and switches in there, along with NetApp to do our storage. In years past, we'd have CenturyLink or Lumen bring in like really big pipes with the internet. So 300 gigabit per second internet pipes, and just rock it all day long, downloading movies and everything all the ISOs that you could want when you have over 300 gig of raw internet capacity, and your laptop's usually limited to Wi-Fi 6 speed. So whatever you can have, you can take. And we don't have a lot of time to set it up. They give us the venue with just a blank floor, and we have the opportunity to roll out the equipment. We drop our shipping container in there. We drop power. We drop the internet in, and usually hook up cooling behind that blue box there. You'll see, the cooling system. And curious thing is, if you're going to put air conditioning in an enclosed space, you also need to deal with the condensate. So as this equipment's generating, some water coming off the cooling, we have to figure out where to drain it. So interesting little problems that we have in a mobile environment is, where does the water need to go? And sometimes you don't have a drain on the floor. So then you do some fun things like having it pumped into a 5-gallon water jug and setting up a Raspberry Pi to monitor water levels and things of that nature. So the question becomes, where does NetBox come into this? So because of all the equipment that we're dealing with, we need to know what's being deployed, what state is it in, how is it configured, and we also use some of the status fields in NetBox to provide an intent for what status we want that device to be in, and that triggers monitoring tools. It triggers a lot of things, health checks, and as we get towards the end of the event, when we're needing to pick equipment up, we can also look into our availability dashboard to see what's still online. We can look in NetBox to see what's still been rolled out to the venue and what needs to come back in. So a lot of equipment needs to be monitored. And we have several monitoring strategies. For this audience, I thought just the open source one is probably the most important part, plus NetBox being there to help us glue together the inventory and understand what's going on. And, in order to do this, we got to think about all the different management protocols that we have available to us in the industry. And I do a lot in network monitoring and observability and automation, but I also do a lot of programming too. We just heard Arne, talk about some of the things with Ansible that he's doing. To that end, to try to pull all these things together, one of the first jokes I'm going to share here, it's all about the APIs. So you got to bring things together because most of these products that are out there, they stop at, hey, I've got a cool API, and then it's up to you to figure out how to do the orchestration across to another solution, right? And even NetBox is that way. They have a rich API, but then it's up to us to figure out, how do I bridge that API so I can put information into NetBox and get information out of NetBox. And that's one of the things that we've done. I've got a QR code for a Cisco Live presentation I did this summer about using NetBox to manage a Cisco network inventory. It was an hour-long talk. I'm giving a very much condensed version of it, but I encourage you to go see this session. It's online and freely available through this QR code. And in that, when we think about what technology we're bringing into our dynamic environment, we have a Catalyst Center, which is a network management solution for enterprise level monitoring, the wireless LAN controller for managing those 2,300 wireless access points across the venue, our ACI APIC controller for data center fabric in the container, Prime Network Registrar for our DNS and DHCP services, VMware vCenter, Broadcom vCenter, whatever they're calling it these days. And then Kubernetes, obviously. There's just a lot that goes in IT service management, right? And so we want to pull these devices and controllers and applications that have an authoritative view about the inventory and push them into NetBox. So that becomes our single point of view about what's out there, right? An interesting thing about the behind the scenes part of Cisco Live is, yes, we have Cisco people that are in the NOC, but we also have local Las Vegas based IT staff augmentation. Let's say it that way, right? They're field techs. And so this group is called Tater Technologies. And so we wanted to be able to give those folks, hey, we've got these switches, a stack of switches. They're your responsibility to go deploy them to this part of the venue. And then let us know when you've got them deployed. We'll start to monitor them. And that allows the Cisco people to be in the NOC doing our thing and using the staff augmentation and field service techs from Tater Technologies to go do the hands-on and running across the venue. Since we needed to have some way to help these folks who are not going to be using a full-blown NetBox, we started building a PyWeb.io mobile app that I affectionately call Hot Potato, because we're working with Tater Technologies and we're giving them essentially a stack of routers and switches and access points to go roll across the venue. So what happens is the Cisco network guy in the NOC will go and see all of the thousands of devices that we have in inventory in NetBox, and he'll assign it to an awaiting deployment state. And that allows the Tater folks that are being field service techs for us to go into this mobile app on their phone or tablet and say, what devices are in my control right now that I need to deploy? And they hit that review awaiting deployment queue button, and then it lists out, these are the devices and where they need to go. They can individually update devices. In this case, what they're doing is they've selected that awaiting deployment queue, and they say, we've got 2 of these Catalyst 9300 switches that need to go to the threat wall and the video wall. Once they have those devices and then take them to their location, plug in their network and power, then they can scan a barcode on that device and then get more information about it, like what kind of device it is, its serial number, and its current deployment state. At that point, they can change the deployment state from awaiting deployment to actually deployed. Okay. And that change of state is a webhook action in NetBox that then does network health checks to that device. Are we able to get to that device? Because they said they hooked it up, but did it actually synchronize with the rest of the network? Is it good with network time protocol, AAA? Can we log into the device? Is the netconf management interface ready to go? All those things, we can do some health checks. And then when we're good with that, then we promote it to active monitoring. And then it shows up in the availability dashboard and other monitoring tools. Another thing that's kind of neat is that they need to upload a deployment image of that device, because the person rolling that device out may not be the same person retrieving the asset later on in the event. And we don't know if they stuck it under a table, behind some pipe and drape, or behind a podium, wherever. And usually having a picture taken of where that device is physically deployed is helpful. And when they do that through this mobile app, it actually will then show up in NetBox. And we can see here, in this case, there was an access point and a network switch that was put below the swing down panel, and then within a set of double closing doors. So unless you are familiar with where this had been, you wouldn't know where that equipment had been actually connected. So having this picture in context allows our network team to know where it is and tell somebody, oh, hey, go look behind this pipe and drape or this podium to find that equipment and recover it. So NetBox, it's great asset management. I understand we don't necessarily talk about it being real-time operations status, but we are using it that way with the status field to say this is where we want this device to be. We're allocating it to awaiting deployment. It's been deployed, or now it's online and active. Or if something fails, then we change the state to failed, and that sends messages out through our chat channels, and folks will go retrieve the assets. I would encourage you, since it was asked earlier, to to share some of the artifacts. We have this out on a Git repo, so there's an import to NetBox project that we built to help us. But I'll also give a plug for Rich Bibby's presentation last week on diode, because I think that's going to be very helpful too. So go back last week and look at the NetBox Labs diode presentation that Rich gave. And now the hard part. So you guys may have heard Cisco was doing layoffs, and I actually found out yesterday that I was part of that. So I had an option to say, sorry, not going to give this talk today, but I didn't want you guys to, miss out on this. So I just went ahead and said, I'm going to do it anyway. But that means I have some free time. So if you think this is interesting and you have some opportunities at your company, reach out to me, or at least look me up. All right, that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Hey, Jason, that was a bit of a smack in the face there. I feel really bad for you there, and I'm sorry to hear the news. But
I'm good.
You seem good. You seem the spirits seem good. So I'm sure you'll land very quickly on your feet. But yeah, that's big news. And thanks for that talk, Jason. That was very, very interesting, very inspiring about what's possible to be done through automation. And I can just imagine the logistic aspect of that we wasn't really covered, other than the sheer numbers there. But there's probably quite a bit of planning and prep to get all that done in the short time span you guys do that. So kudos to that. Are there any questions from anybody on the call for Jason, or for Arne for that matter? Okay, I think we'll move on. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Arne.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find. There we go. There we go. So we did Arne. That was Jason, and so we're kind of coming to the closing up of our discussion. The one thing I would like to encourage everyone is to if you've got something, if you're working on a project, if you got some ideas on how you're using NetBox to drive whatever use case you might have, particularly a novel use case, we'd love to hear from you. So we're always looking for new presenters as part of our community calls, just like Arne and Jason. But there are other ways. If you prefer not to do public speaking, we can also do it in the form of a blog. For example, Jason actually did a guest blog post on the NetBox Labs website earlier this summer. So I encourage you to go read that if you're interested. But maybe your project or your kind of angle on all this is best done in the form of a blog, or it might actually be just a shout out as part of another blog. For example, Renato wrote an SNMP extension to the diode SDK that Jason was actually referring to earlier this summer. So we actually made a mention of Renato's efforts there, and for one thing is just to get more visibility into his work, as well as maybe there are others that would like to leverage it to do whatever it does. In this case, to allow SNMP polling of devices to populate NetBox data. So all that to say is, if you've got a story to share, we'd love to hear it, whether it's on the community call or in other format. So please feel free to reach out. I'm going to post in the chat here a link to a form, just a Google form that feel free to follow that link and sign up for any future talks that you'd like to give, and we'll reach out and coordinate with you. And if the link doesn't work, feel free to reach out at anybody at NetBox Labs, and we'll be gladly help you out to steer you to the right people. On that note, I think we are pretty much done. So this kind of concludes this month's call. The next call is scheduled for Tuesday, October 15th. And so between now and then, we'll let you know kind of the talks, and we're still kind of curating our speakers for the next call. But on that note, I'd like to, unless there's any comments in the chat, I don't see anything. I think we'll close it here. So, like I said, we're gonna leave the lines open, or the webinar open for open discussion, but we're gonna stop the recording. So if there's any topics that anybody wants to talk about, feel free to bring them up. On that note, I'd like to thank once again Arne and Jason for their presentations today, and wish everyone a great day.